Kevin Mead, welcome to the Modern Sales Management Show.
Great to be here, Josh.
I'm really excited about this conversation because you're in a unique position in the way that you support sales teams. You're involved in the data and the plumbing behind some really successful, highly producing sales teams. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got there and your journey to being in this unique position?
Yeah, for sure. So fresh out of college, I was coming as a computer science major, but I had a lot of interest in marketing. I had done some business during college, and I was doing sales, and I realized, man, this is exhausting. I'd love if leads were the ones calling me, and they would close right away. And then I met marketing, and I was just so enamored with that process and kind of understanding how to meet people's needs before they coded the sales team. And I actually ended up taking my first job at a SaaS company doing the MarTech. And what that meant was I actually Googled it as soon as I got the job because I just didn't know what MarTech was. And so I ended up looking into it, and it was enabling marketing to be able to work better with sales, understand customers better. And me coming from the computer science world, I didn't have a lot of talent in copywriting. And, I guess I was a web developer, but I just didn't know too much about marketing. So MarTech was really cool to me because it was this way where I could improve things and be able to learn some of those skill sets while coming from the tech world. And so during that first job, what I ended up learning was, MarTech has a big role in some of this stuff, but, alignment with a sales team drives revenue. That was kind of my first lesson from that process. I wasn't, the best marketer in the world, but what I could do, the thing that didn't take any talent, was I could be friends with my sales team. And once I did that, they told me their problems, they asked for solutions, and we started generating revenue as a team. From there, I got really passionate about that, started doing some contracting, and then ended up at a company called Quick that was an on-demand staffing platform. And we had some very ambitious goals to be able to scale and open up basically a new city every single month. And as a sales ops person and a marketing ops person, I was like, how are we going to do this? Like, how do we make sure that we scale with the people we hire? And that's where I really started going back to my computer science roots and asking, like, how do I solve these revenue problems with a coding background, with trying to solve scale problems. And so that's where I am today, where I do work on the RevOps to make it that I solve those scale problems. I do demand gen, just like my first job, and work with sales teams. And then I also write a blog about how to use coding to help solve revenue problems.
That's awesome. It's a really unique path because it really straddles the tech solution side and the things that drive business, the things that matter to the CEO. Now, you're involved in Phoenix and in other cities. You're heavily involved in the startup scene, and you've been involved in growing SaaS companies for many years. Tell us a little bit about what's unique in terms of SaaS companies and their mindset when it comes to scaling.
Yeah, well, the name of the game for SaaS companies is scale, right? It's validation and scale are the two hardest things for a SaaS company to do. And they need to prove that they can take on VC money and turn it into a large ROI with a multiplier. The reason that VC is so interested in SaaS is because it can run on itself, right? No matter the operations, like if you compare a SaaS company and an agency will keep needing to hire more people to grow, and will always have fulfillment being 40% of what they need to do in a day-to-day, and they're working in a business. What's really great about SaaS is that a lot of that fulfillment is automated or streamlined, so it might still have some operations in it, but what's cool about that is it switches a lot of the time that would go on to fulfillment into developing products so that fulfillment is satisfaction, retention, But also what's really great about it for marketers and salespeople is there's a really high need for it, because that's where we put our energy. And with VC money coming in, we need a way that we can really produce with it. And so that's where it's there's a lot of opportunity for marketers, is because these companies need to figure out, how do we show an ROI, how do we show growth, and how do we show that if we get more money coming into us and we hire more salespeople or we increase our budget, that's going to actually have the same amount of growth as it would when we started with $0. And so that's what's really cool. On the flip side, it creates I would say it doesn't create interesting challenges, but it exasperates challenges that already exist in every business. So really the things that I like to work on are department alignment, sales and marketing working together, customer success being a extension of the product. These things are really difficult. They're probably one of the most difficult things in any company. But when you're moving really fast and you have an influx of capital, when you have silos, it just blocks that flow and it stops the growth. And so that's probably one of my more interesting, the things that I'm really interested in is that alignment. People call it smarketing, but I had that first experience, at my first company, and I've seen that I would much rather take an average team that works seamlessly together and has information on what everyone else is doing than an individual contributor or two, one on the sales team, one on marketing, that are just fantastic but can't work together. And so it's you can go. Yeah.
So if I'm a chief revenue officer, I'm listening to this podcast right now and I'm saying, I've always heard of sales and marketing alignment, but it seems like this ethereal concept to me. Can you paint a picture for a SaaS company of what sales and marketing alignment looks like? What are some of the things you would see in a company where the sales and marketing team are aligned?
Yeah, for sure. So it does feel like an ethereal thing. It's hard to reach sometimes. The funny thing is I've felt that in my experience, it's just about building respect and camaraderie and friendship with your sales team. The hard part is marketing and sales serve two roles that are very distinct, and they have different incentives that make it really hard to work together in certain ways unless you really make it an effort. And so, sales, each individual has a certain number, has, certain things that they're being incentivized for. So why would they take, if they have a quota that they're really struggling to reach, and, even an accelerator that makes it that they want to keep reaching more things, why would they work with their marketing team? Because it's taking time that's really valuable to prospecting. It's really tough. And so but what's really cool is when you finally get that alignment, some real magic happens. What happens is the sales team and the marketing team inform each other. I've been in the situation where I've been on a marketing team and we were marketing to a completely different persona than the salespeople were going after. Because the salesperson knew that the people that were actually bringing revenue in were this one persona, and marketing was onboarded and trained to go after another. Just a conversation in that situation where you say hey, how were those leads? Oh, they weren't that great. And not taking offense there, but what happens is there's a little bit of this crossfire. But what's really cool is you can start having marketing tailor things for the sales team. If you really check some of the ego and the tension in that situation and you build, respect and friendship, then you can really start taking positive feedback in those situations and being hey, I would rather not call a lead like that because it's not going to get me to my quota. And once you have that feedback, marketing can be oh, I didn't know that. I don't talk to the customers the way you do. And so then they can start bringing leads. And what's really cool is I find if you, filter leads, you have as a marketer say, I am defending my salespeople's time. I will not give them a lead unless I feel like it really is something that will close. I find in those situations and where you show respect for your salespeople's time, they will show respect for your time. And then you can start building that gratefulness. And if you're contributing to their commission, I also think it's important for marketers to understand the commission structure to a certain point. And you give them the incentive, your salespeople will be grateful and they'll start to give more, and it'll be a give and take rather than just a silo.
That makes sense. You're understanding their motivations to motivate them.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can get into some really fun things. Like I had talked to you the other day of, running ads to people that the salespeople have already called. So it's, this serendipitous moment of like, I just got off the phone with a salesperson. He was really excited about this thing that I've never heard of. And now I'm seeing ads everywhere. I didn't even go to their website. You can do stuff like that with marketing technology like HubSpot. But a lot of it comes from that moment of, coming together as two teams and really understanding what incentivizes each other.
When you first start working with a SaaS company, you're brought in by the CEO or Chief Revenue Officer, VP of Sales, and what are the things that you look at? What are the metrics? Is your first day, you're meeting with an executive team. What are the things, what's the information that you want to know so that you can analyze to know the lay of the land and what kind of shape they're in?
Yeah, for sure. So I think from a revenue perspective, I think about things. There's a lot of other things that go into it, but if you think about the average CRO, they're managing a lot of plates. They're managing sales, marketing, and customer success. That is a lot to handle. And so what I like to look at is kind of three things. One, if I added a salesperson to this sales organization, how well would they do? How fast would they train up? When would they start being with the pack of the team? Obviously, when asking these questions, it depends on size. This is assuming they have a team already. So that takes a lot of things into account. It's like, do they have the right training? Do they have processes that help this person, listen to calls, really understand the customer really fast? Because, even the best salesperson, they enter a new market, they might have no clue what that market is like. And so that is really important. On top of that is, do we have the processes to streamline the workflow for our salespeople? Are they spending, the HubSpot has said the average salesperson spends 8 hours a week on research. Are they spending those 8 hours? And if I have a group of 8 salespeople and I just keep adding people, I'm slowing the team down because we're not making anything better. We're just adding more people to the problem. And so that mentality really makes a difference. Then on the marketing side, I think the number one question is, what are we doing? Are we driving revenue? That's my number one question. And I think it's controversial. I come from a demand gen background, and it took me a while to understand some of the long-term stuff like brand and content. That's very important still, and that has an impact. But the metrics that the marketing team, focuses at, if it's not in alignment with the sales team, they're never going to have a good relationship in any situation. And so, at the end of the day, being able to track revenue is the first thing. If you're putting 100 leads on the plate of the salespeople and nothing's turned into real revenue that gets them commission, you're wasting their time. And honestly, you're probably dipping revenue because they're not spending that time researching, prospecting, closing, etc. And so that would be the biggest thing on marketing. Once you get past that revenue barrier and you start really providing stuff, then you can get into the fun stuff of like, okay, are we reducing the sales cycle? I think that's one of the things no one's looking at when they're talking about inbound. And I've historically always built inbound from scratch where there was none. And what I find is, as I'm going through that, getting approval from salespeople and getting approval from the CROs, all that stuff, it's really helpful to go to them and say, hey, we're actually intercepting people when they need us. Therefore, we're not spending those 7 touch points to just get a meeting. We just skipped half of the sales process and we're here. We have someone who's ready to close and they're interested. And historically, that's cut sales cycle by like 50%. Those numbers really show the advantage of inbound when a company may not be comfortable in investing in, content, advertising, all these things that look like cost centers, but at the end of the day, it's really important to identify the value there really quickly. And then finally, on the customer success side, retention, churn. Are we making things better? And doing stuff like cohort analysis of, we just released this new feature. Did retention go down? Or, can we predict churn? Stuff like that. And so that's kind of all I look at initially from a revenue perspective.
What are some of the biggest pitfalls that you see sales leaders encountering, and how can the listeners of this podcast avoid those pitfalls?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ones is, I would say two is, one, not investing in your salespeople. I think that's the biggest one. Like I said earlier, actually, I'm not sure if I mentioned it. Salespeople take about 5 months to ramp up. That is expensive. I think marketers take about the same amount of time. But I think while hiring is a key, it's a key way to grow, you also need to not throw money, you can't throw people at the problem. You need to build processes in your CRM. You need to be able to make it that it's more exponential when you hire someone because they're contributing to the process. Something that is always an analogy I love to use because I manage the CRM and all that is, I don't want one sales rep to be the number one person getting all the commission, bringing in all the deals, and then have 3 reps that just are average, right? Keeping their jobs. I want all of them to raise at the same time because we're investing in the processes that make it quicker to succeed on an average basis. Obviously, you'll have high performers within that, but when you see these massive differences, it's pretty clear that you're not investing in the salespeople. You're not, something that's very passionate to me is lead sourcing, right? I've gone through a situation where there have been lead droughts for my salespeople, and instead of that 8 hours a week, they're spending half their week, 20 hours, just trying to find, leads to call. When, salespeople are expensive, right? When we could just go to Upwork or go to hunter.io and we could source leads at scale. These are the questions in terms of investment that I really think are important. The other thing that's really important is making sure your CRM is not an obstacle. At the end of the day, there's so much that a HubSpot or a Salesforce can do for your company if you really optimize it. It needs to be the driver of your revenue. Obviously, that's going to be the salespeople, but it needs to be an extension of your salespeople, not an obstacle. And
it has to be that we're talking simplicity. We're talking about getting it set up right for your business. That's one of my favorite. People say, all right, I bought HubSpot. We've been using it for 3 years or 2 years or 1 year. It's not really working for us. And they're using all the default out of the box settings. These systems are customizable for a reason. So it can fit your team, your market, and your sales process.
Yeah, exactly. I think that a HubSpot, it doesn't come out of the box. Well, now it does. I've been doing this for 3 years with HubSpot, but and they keep getting better. But they used to not track sales cycle. They don't track the close reasons that certain companies use. HubSpot's a great out of the box tool, but if you really want it to be part of your revenue strategy, where it's tracking churn. You can integrate all these things into it to really be the driver of your revenue rather than just, I love the expression, the source of truth. And I think HubSpot, what's so great about it is that you can customize it for some of these things. One of the things that I'm really passionate about and working on our products for is basically integrating your software into HubSpot so that when something happens in your HubSpot, or your software, it immediately triggers into HubSpot, and then you can have marketers be armed with all these things like, this person took an action, let's call them up, or this person hasn't posted in 8 days or done an action, they're probably going to churn. They're in trouble. We need to save them. Without doing these customizable things, you're really wasting the time of your salespeople and your marketers because they don't have all the information to really succeed.
That's a really good point. If you're a SaaS company and you're not connected to HubSpot in that way, you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table, both from a additional sales and retention standpoint. Uh, so to wrap up today, this is such a good conversation. To wrap up, can you give me your number one or your top two favorite ways to save salespeople time during the week?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the number one, it's really basic. It's build a system to find the right leads with good intent. Now, that could be marketing. And if it's marketing, you're probably further along ahead. Usually most software companies don't have marketing figured out when I talk to them. That being said, there's still stuff of, scraping websites that are in your industry, connecting to like a Yelp or something like that, or, a Zoom info, or even an Upwork. I've done Upwork as a way to source leads for 8 months because it makes sense. That being said, at the core of it, it's finding a way to get really high quality leads in there that we can then prospect and to a certain extent score or sort. My dream as a revenue ops person from a sales perspective is that my salesperson, every single one of them sits down, they have the top 100 people that they need to call or 20, and that's all they need to do for that day. And it's all the people that need a call are the closest to close. And even that could be, they went to our pricing page. They're not 100% a lead, but they're interested at least. Having those triggers and really understanding what intent is and knowing the conversations happening inside a business is a leg up. I think that's probably the best way to do it. That being said, if you can do that through advertising and ebooks, that's one of the most producing things I've ever done with a sales team is run an ebook about a problem that to our audience. So we have like a custom audience, and we just let people self-opt in as having these conversations internally. And what happens with that is you just cut your CRM, even if you didn't get a phone number, we can probably find a phone number online. You just cut the CRM in a fourth because you just showed this amount of people are really ready to buy. And so I think that connection of, having a way to build research automatically, and then also using your marketing team to find the right people, I think those are the best ways to really build a great sales team that is efficient. And you could add someone into it and they would have the people to call, there still would be training to it, but I think that's the best way to cut time for a salesperson.
Kevin Mead, this has been a great conversation. For those listening today, where can they find you online? Where can they learn more about the insight that you can offer?
Yeah, so I have two websites that I do stuff for. So one is scriptsformarketers.com. That sounds like how it's spelled. I post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn about how to use programming for stuff like this, like revenue driving initiatives. The other one would be my consultancy, which is salestream.co. So that's focused more on actually implementing these things, but LinkedIn is also a great place to find me.
That's great. Do you have any final advice for people who are in charge of hitting that revenue number at a SaaS company every month?
Yeah, I think really looking at your business as a process, as, how do we hit that revenue despite all the other features? How do we make sure that if I add a new person, we're performing? I think really focusing on those processes is how software companies can really do well. It's kind of from the RevOps playbook, but data-driven sales leadership is really hot right now. If you do that while also, making your sales and marketing team get along, that really is what's going to grow the business.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Kevin, I want to really thank you for this conversation, and let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, that does it for this episode of the Modern Sales Management Show. Have a great day.